Hello. Hello. All right. Hi, welcome back to my channel. It has been a while since I have gone live, but I am here. I have a message for you. It's been a while. I stopped making videos. I stopped coming on live because other things became a priority, but I'm coming back and prioritizing my platform because I feel like it's just time for me to be consistent, and I feel like it's time for me to step into what I have been chosen to do. And I really want to be obedient to that. I really want to fall into that, and I've been having like this deep longing to really fall into my purpose. Like I really just want to research my craft more. I want to dive in. I really want to start being able to perfect it and get better and be the best version that I can be so I can help other people, because that's what I have been called to do. I put the wrong date on my notes, but we still about to do what it do, get it popping. All right, so this morning, all right, so every morning, let me give a little backstory. Every morning, I read my Bible, I do yoga, and I drink tea. This is how I start my day. It allows me to think clearly of what I need to do for the day, and it just gives me just that alone time that I need. I'm constantly serving others throughout the day, so this gives me my time to myself to serve myself. So I started in the book of Genesis last year, and I'm barely in Exodus. I've been taking my time with this. It has required a lot of time, and I'm in Exodus now. And today, when I was reading it, I was in the part where Moses has been, God has reached out to Moses, okay? And the cry out in Egypt from the Hebrews has gotten to the point where God has is responding. It's touching God's heart. The affliction on his people, his chosen people, has been so great to where God is ready to do the thing. God is ready to basically deliver them from Egypt, deliver them from the hand of Pharaoh. Now, this Pharaoh is not the same Pharaoh that was in position when Joseph was around. This is another Pharaoh. And so these are the notes that I have for when I was doing my reading and what I was perceiving from it and what the Lord gave me in my heart to write down. Living in your ancestors' blessings. Whatever is oppressing you has to loose you. But you first have to cry out. Because of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's obedience, they had generations tied to their promises. Or because of their obedience, God promised their generations after them with an abundant land, which is the land of Canaan. The affliction could be affliction can be anything that you have been dealing with in your lineage, right? Whatever you grew up under. So affliction for you could have been you growing up in a household where the parenting style wasn't ideal, or the people around you did not exemplify obedience to God's will. And the ways and actions that led the generations prior to you, they have all been basically tainted or cursed with these actions. They may have acted in a way that was not pleasing to God, right? So now you are growing up in the same home as this, but it's affecting you differently because when you're chosen, you can't thrive in chaos. You can't thrive in darkness, right? So what generations before you were able to do it doesn't feel good to your spirit. It doesn't feel good to your soul, right? So this is what I was picturing when in the Bible it said that the Hebrews or the Israelites were crying out to God. So God sent Moses to deliver them from the hand of Pharaoh in Egypt. So sometimes our environment when we're growing up, we eventually don't like that environment anymore, and we cry out to God like, help me. I don't like this. I don't like living in the spirit of lust, or I don't like living in the spirit of addiction. I don't like living in the spirit of depression. Whatever it is, God, when you cry out to God, whatever is in your spirit that has you bound, and God has promised the generations before to deliver you from that, God is going to respond. But it does require a cry out, okay? So that was the first thing, is the crying out to God, seeking God, like, Lord, help me, get me out of this. And I see Cordell, you mentioned you need deliverance. Hopefully what I am explaining and what the Lord has placed on my heart to speak today, hopefully this leads you to your deliverance. And at the end, we can close with a prayer, absolutely. But God specifically told me to come on and give this message. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm not a deliverer, because God may want me to be one at one point, but that wasn't. Yeah, I'm not an expert in that field. I just want to be completely transparent and honest. My level of expertise is mind renewal. So I can help you get your mindset where it needs to be so you can be delivered. I can do that. And I can pray. I can do that, definitely. But when it comes to your deliverance, I believe that God, you would need to seek the Lord. You will have to seek God, and you will have to, what I'm saying, cry out, and He will deliver you. I am definitely someone who can vouch for you on that. Okay, so here we are. We are at the point, we are in the space of generations before you not showing you the way in which you should go. So you're led astray, but then you cry out to God, right? So this is where the Israelites are. They have been slaves. If you're not familiar with Exodus, basically they have been slaves for some time, and now they're crying out to God, seeking His help, seeking His counsel. And what else did I put? Now, because of this, those generations stayed longer than what God willed. So and one of the things I thought about, had they been following God, and this is just a one-off. I did not research this, but this is something that came to my mind, because Abraham left his father's home. I want to say Isaac and Jacob as well. They left where they were originally born, right? But here in the text, when we're in Exodus, it doesn't necessarily say that the Israelites or the Hebrews had moved. It looks like they had stayed there. And one of the things that came to my mind is, could it be possible that they stayed in Egypt a little bit too long, and they adopted different beliefs and different perspectives, and God had to deliver their minds and their mindsets because of what they got themselves into by staying somewhere too long, which kind of goes hand in hand with what I was saying prior to this, was the generations before them doing things a certain type of way that was not in God's will. God still allowed it, but it wasn't within His will. You know, even though God may allow some things that's not in His will, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the promise is, if that makes sense. But that's one of the things that I thought too, is, could it be that God or the Israelites stayed a little too long in Egypt? Were they supposed to have moved around before this moment, before they became enslaved? That's another thought. But we're going to keep going in the notes. God knew this day was going to come. So God knew the day would come. They would be so afflicted, they wouldn't have any choice but to seek him without ceasing. And that's what pulls on God's heart, is when we get to praying without ceasing, that is how we unlock the floodgates of heaven. Because we're constantly seeking him. There is a scripture somewhere, I did not write it down. You can probably research it, but it's seek first the kingdom and I will add all these things to you. So we do need to seek God's counsel without ceasing. Because when we seek him, when we give him our heart, when we are going after him feverishly, unwavering faith, that builds the relationship. We're going after his heart. That touches his heart. Like, think about someone going after your heart. I'm not comparing you to God, but we have feelings too, right? And if we're created in his image, his likeness and image, we must be able to share some type of the same emotions and feelings. That's how I think about it. And I'm sure it makes him feel really good when we're seeking him and we're trying to get to know him and we want to know what things mean. I believe it. So when we seek him and we want to do what it is that he called us to do, that makes him feel good. That makes him feel more connected with us, right? It's beautiful. So them being so afflicted that they called out to him, this is the response. He goes to Moses, the leader, to get them out of Egypt. And now Moses he's also a Hebrew, he's also an Israelite, but he was born around the time when the Hebrew boys were to be killed. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube. I hope that this doesn't get flagged, but he was born around the time when Pharaoh ordered all the boys, all the Hebrew Israelite boys, to be at birth. And he survived because his mom placed him in I'm gonna call it like a basket, a floating basket, and put him in the river. And Pharaoh's daughter found him and she wanted to keep him. That's how Moses got to be alive, and how he wasn't necessarily Egyptian, but he was raised as an Egyptian. So he was a Hebrew raised as an Egyptian. And that right there, hold on 1 second. I don't want to do that. That right there gives him an advantage because he knows the ins and outs of the Egyptians. He knows inside details, right? So that actually works in his favor, that he has to go and rescue or lead the Hebrews outside of Egypt. He knows the language of the Egyptians. He knows the posture. He knows basically more than what an Israelite would know when it comes to how to approach an Egyptian. But he also has God. And when you have God, like, you got everything with you. You don't necessarily need any type of introduction. However, it was a reason why God allowed Moses to be raised up as an Egyptian. He would need these skills to help be a leader to the Israelites and the Hebrews at an appointed time, which was this time. Now, there is this was just a side note also, that there is a mentor who is trained with the knowledge and wisdom of the oppressors who are causing you affliction, who will lead you out of the affliction, but you mustn't complain. They are sent from God. And that's what I was talking about with Moses. So he was raised in the house or in the kingdom of the oppressors, So when you are raised around or amongst those who are oppressors, you learn their language, you learn the way they think, you learn their perspectives, you learn a lot about them. So you become an insider and you'll be able to beat them at their own game, per se. So I believe that's why God also chose Moses too, because he was trained. He knew how they thought, but basically before he knew how they thought more so than the Hebrews and the Israelites. He had inside knowledge and information. And that's a lot of us too. So when you see and that's another thing, because the Israelites and the Hebrews, they were not accustomed to getting help. They were accustomed to being slaves. So when Moses came, I'm gonna try not to spoil the end, but when Moses came to deliver them, there was a little pushback from the Hebrews and the Israelites, which we'll get into later. But they gave pushback because they were not used to it. Some people are not used to help. Some people are so used to a certain type of mindset and a certain type of way of doing things that when they have to put in a certain level of work, it looks like confrontation to them. It looks like you're being hard on them. It looks like something unfamiliar, and people reject what they don't know. So a lot of Moses leading the Israelites out, the Israelites were introduced to something that they didn't know, so they pushed it away. They rather have gone back to the slave mindset because at least they knew it. They knew what their work was going to be. They didn't know what their work was going to be as freedmen and women and children. Now, the land of the freedom, this is another thing that I also wrote down. The land of freedom will be occupied with those who have been free. So you need the wilderness journey to develop your speech, belief in God, and belief in your own ability and power that God has given to you as his chosen vessel. A new way of eating, working out, and socializing is all a part of this purge and development process. This is to reveal you have always belonged and you don't sabotage with your words and actions and allow fear to steal your inheritance. So this process that you are going to be going through, it is to develop you, and it is to get you accustomed to speaking as a winner. Get you accustomed to speaking as if you already have been in the room and you belong in the room. So keep that in mind when you are dealing with difficult situations and when it feels like you've taken 2 steps back and 2 steps forward and 10 steps back. Because sometimes when we are moving too fast, we do have to slow down and pace ourselves. We do have to slow down and say, okay, I need to redo this step because I must have missed something that's important. And don't beat yourself up because you have to slow down. Slowing down is very important. It's a part of the learning process. And when you get into the room with other free people and people who have been there, you don't want to lean too much in your lack of confidence because you can self-sabotage your opportunities. So the process is very important, and I hope that this message helps you on your journey, and it helps you to identify that you are coming out of bondage, you are coming out of being a slave, and you no longer have to eat the certain way. You no longer have to receive just the bare minimum, and you are entitled to abundance. So stay focused. If it seems difficult to do in the beginning, that's okay. You will learn how to get better. You'll perfect your craft. And also, if it appears that things are not working out, actually they are. They are working out, but you also have to identify what's not working so you can be the problem solver as well. You have to learn how to create solutions out of problems. So sometimes problems are there, and then there's also the development process where you're developing your faith muscle and you know God is going to show up even when it looks like he won't. So I hope that this helps you. I hope this message finds you in a good space. I hope that you're able to take some gems from this, because It is very different when you come out of a space that you're familiar with and you're going into unfamiliar territory and you're having to do things new and you don't really know what to do. This message, I hope, gives you that insight, and it turns the light bulb on in your thought process as to keep going forward and don't self-sabotage your opportunities. Okay. um, like I said, mentors come and they may have you do things a certain type of way that you've never done it before, and it may look like you're losing things, but continue to pray, continue to seek God's counsel, and it'll all work out in the end. All right, be blessed, and thank you for staying and watching the entire video, and you have a great rest of your day.